Hey everybody, welcome back to Living Life 2.0. I am Brandon, and I am so excited to have my friend, my guest, Ria Story, with us today. We are going to be talking about overcoming adversity and personal growth in order to build a successful life. I am so excited to hear Ria share with us. I've seen lots of her videos. I've even seen her on stage at a John Maxwell event. And I know that you all are going to love to listen to her. So, Ria, I have a quick little intro of you, and I did it quick and little because we could say a lot about you, I'm pretty sure. But everybody, yeah, everybody. Well, and I want to learn before I do this. Like, look at all those medals in your background. What are those from?
I'm a marathon runner, so an avid run, and I've done some mountain biking. My husband and I did a lot of mountain biking several years ago. So I actually took the 2011 and 2012 state championships in Alabama and Georgia in my division.
Wow.
So, but we've kind of graduated on from mountain biking, but I still do a lot of running. It's a great way to keep up with my own physical fitness. And interestingly enough, it's one of the things I talk about is that growing in our physical dimension of health helps us grow in other dimensions. So I know we'll get
Yeah.
into that as we go.
Excellent. Okay, well, let me introduce you because we could have just kind of taken off and kept talking and forgot that I hadn't introduced you yet. So, everybody, Ria Story, she's an amazing speaker and a leadership speaker and author. And she has over 20 years' experience in leadership and management. She's a certified leadership speaker and trainer with the John Maxwell team. And she shared the stage with Les Brown, John Maxwell, and others. So jealous you've shared a stage with Les Brown. But she's passionate about empowering women to increase their influence, develop their leadership, and maximize results so they can become leaders they are destined to be. She shares her powerful story so other people can look at her and say, if she can do it, so can I. She has been on TEDx stages, and she brings her story, her passion, her leadership with everyone here today. Ria, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely, Brandon. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, and we just got Allison Little is going on the
Hey,
comments saying
Allison.
hi to both of us. She was a guest here last week, and she was awesome. So hi.
Allison is awesome. She is. If you haven't read her new book, it's worth checking out.
Absolutely. I'm going to say hi to her there. And anyone else, if you're on, you're watching, we'd love to know where you're from. And if you have a question for Ria, please just put them in the comments. I'll keep my eye on it, and we'll go from there. So, Ria, the topic of our conversation today was personal development and overcoming obstacles
hmm
for success, a successful life. Why is that so passionate, such a passion point of yours?
Well, I think that every single one of us face adversity. I don't think that. I know that. Every single one of us go through tough times in life. And I think at sooner or later, we are going to need those skills to be resilient. It really started and stemmed from my story. I was a victim of sexual abuse by my father starting at age 12, and it progressed as I got older. By the time I was 17, he was regularly having sex with me and would bargain with me for sexual favors in exchange for something like a night out with my friends. And then he started trafficking me to men he would meet off the internet. And that during that time of my life, there were times when life was just almost not worth living. And I thought about it. I thought about a tub of warm water and a razor blade. But um, what happens to us in life isn't as important as who we become because of it. Now, I left home at 19. I left behind the father who sexually abused me for years and the mother who blamed me for it. And I didn't have anything when I left home. I didn't have a job. I didn't have any money. I didn't have a high school diploma. I'd never been to school. But we can take whatever happens to us and we can be bitter about it, or we can be better because of it. And after I left home, I didn't talk about what happened to me for many years. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to go back there. It was really the best way that I knew to cope at the time was to just shut it up in a closet and throw away the key. And in 2013, I heard Les Brown speak. And if you guys haven't had the privilege of seeing Les Brown, you got to look him up on YouTube. He's an amazing speaker. And he was speaking to a whole room full of people. And he said, you have a story to tell. And someone needs to hear your story. And I thought, well, I got a story to tell, but I don't really want to tell it. You know, I worked really hard to get away from that, to forget it. But I realized that in sharing my story, if I could just help other people realize that what happens to us doesn't have to define us, it doesn't have to hold us back the rest of our life, then that gave me purpose. You know, Mark Twain says the 2 greatest days in life are the day you're born and the day you discover why. And so I shared my story for the first time in August of 2013 and discovered my why. And that's really where I stepped off and became really passionate about helping empower other people, because my story is unfortunately not that uncommon, but my story might not be everyone's story. It's not everyone's story. But we all experience adversity, right? We all need to be resilient. Resilience is the difference between I didn't die and I learned to live again, right? It's more than just surviving. It's about thriving. It's overcoming.
I'm sorry. That is so good. I've never heard that. I don't think I've heard that. Resilience is the difference between I survived and I'm thriving. That's really good. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I think that, you know, when we face adversity, right, we have a choice to go through it or to grow through it. And you know, it's never any fun when we go through adversity. It's not fun, but it is a growth opportunity. And so we can grow from it, and that's how we overcome it, and that's how we get stronger. It's how we become more able to face adversity in the future. But we do have to learn from it to grow from it. And it's not any fun, right? No one wants to reflect on the lessons that can be learned from bad times or tough times. But it's absolutely our choice how we respond to what happens to us. Because we can't control everything that happens, and we can't control other people. But we always have the opportunity to control how we respond. And how we respond to our circumstances is determining our influence with the people around us, positively or negatively.
So, Ria, how did you get yourself to a place of the ability, the willingness, the desire, and I think the ability to share your story?
I think it really has to come from a place of growth. And I touched on this earlier when you were talking about my medals. For me, I started growing. For me, it was incredibly empowering to start growing physically. Like I just started going to the gym and started working out. And I know that sounds almost too simple, but here's the thing. When we grow in one area of life, it's going to just affect and improve and enhance the other areas of life, right? There are 4 dimensions of life. There's physical, there's emotional and mental, there's social, and then there's spiritual or values-based, right? So for me, I think part of it was just starting to grow in one dimension of life and realizing, because that was just empowering, right? When we start to grow in one dimension of life, it empowers us and it helps us grow in other dimensions. And you know, that was something I was pretty determined to do early on, and it's a journey, right? It took many years to work up to being able to share my story. And even after I started sharing it in 2013, it was more than a year before I wrote the first book about my story. You know, it definitely took some time, a lot of healing. And what was interesting is that, you know, in sharing my story, I wanted to help other people. But I definitely realized through that process that, see, what we won't talk about, we give power over us, right? It was only in owning my story that it was no longer able to own me.
Yeah. I forget that I'm actually like interviewing, talking to you. I just keep listening to you, and I'm like, oh, nugget. I just want to keep writing down nugget, but I can't. I've got it. So I'm sorry about that. What's your advice for people that are in that stage where they know they have a story and they know that the story has actually had more power over them to this point in their life? How do you coach them to take that first step?
I think we get to the process a little differently, so it might not be a one size fits all solution. But the first thing I just advise people to do is start developing yourself, start growing in personal growth, and the reason that's important is because we all have the opportunity to grow through trauma, but what if we could grow before we experience the trauma? So whether you've been through something really, really traumatic or not, I say start growing every single day, just a little bit. It doesn't have to be all day, but read a paragraph a day from a leadership book or a personal growth book, or watch a TEDx talk, listen to a great podcast, right? Just be intentional about developing yourself every single day. And not just competency. I mean, we want to develop our skills. Competency is our skills and technical abilities. Those things are important. But when I say grow and develop, I really talk about personal growth and character, right? Henry Cloud says character is the ability to meet the demands of reality. And so we've got to grow our character because we're going to have to meet the demands of reality, whatever that looks like for us. But it's not very effective if we just leave it to accident, leave it to chance, right? We can be intentional about it, and that helps us. Just like when we exercise our physical muscles, we get stronger. We can exercise our emotional muscles and get stronger, and that's our ability to cope and thrive and to bounce back in the face of adversity.
Yeah. What about the power of community? Talk about the power of community and having other support in our lives.
I think it's foundational. There are three things that we really need in order to heal and overcome. We need, number one is the knowledge that I'm in control of me, that I can respond, I can choose my attitude, I can choose my choices, that I have I think Judith Herman calls it an internal locus of control, right? I can do something, and it starts with me. Responsible for me, even if I'm not responsible for everything else. So that's the first thing we need. The second thing we need is we've got to have a strategy. How am I going to just grow? What is my strategy for lifting myself up when I'm going through a tough time or having a bad day? And the third thing is we need that emotional support, because as people, we form some of our sense of identity based on the relationships that we have in our lives as we're growing up, right? Some of our identity is shaped and influenced by the people in our lives, particularly when we're young. And anytime we're going through something traumatic or just a tough time or, anything, adversity, it's so important because other people can help lift us up. But it's important to have the right people in our lives. I did a post on this the other day. I talk about make sure the people around us are pulling us up, that they're positive influences us. And when I say that, some relationships can be toxic and they don't even mean to be, right? But as we grow and develop, we realize that not everybody values that, and that's okay. We still love them anyway. It doesn't mean we're better than anybody. But sometimes, Mac and I use the analogy that if I'm driving to New York and you're driving to LA, we can't ride in the same car. Right? So sometimes it means looking at those relationships in our lives and saying, you know what, I love this person, but it's not the best decision for me to spend as much time with them. Right. And as we grow, we'll find that that's simply a difference in value. Some people value growth and development, and some people don't. And, we love them anyway. We just don't spend as much time with them. They're just not serving us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that your passion is empowering women specifically. What are your, I know we've been talking about overcoming adversity and personal growth, but what is your unique or specific message when you're talking to women?
Women, I think women by nature are a little more nurturing and a little more relational. And I don't mean that from a feminist point of view. I just think that most people would agree that women by nature are a little more nurturing. What I think most women don't realize is that that's a strength when it comes to influencing other people. See, women are already good at influencing people, right? They influence, every one of us have influence. But But I think women don't necessarily realize that their ability to build great relationships, their ability to nurture others, even without intending to, it's just that instinct to reach out and nurture that. That's a strength when it comes to influence, because influence is based on relationships, which is built on trust. And so I think a lot of women tend to hold back from using that strength and developing that, because we hear in the business world that you shouldn't be so soft, or don't let people run over you. And don't get me wrong, there's a balance, right, between developing that relationship and getting results, especially in the workforce, or whether it's parenting your kids. You have to help them grow and develop, and sometimes that requires discipline. It's no different in the workplace. We want to value the relationship, but also get results for the organization. So I think that's fundamental. Is we first have to realize that we have an opportunity there to develop our influence. But there again, it's not very effective if we just kind of hope it's going to happen, right? I was one of those people that I didn't think of myself as a leader. But all of us have some influence. The only question is, how do we get more of it? Because life gets better when we get more influence. We get more options. We get more opportunities.
Absolutely.
And so that's really what I like to do, is take those leadership principles and just make them easy to apply, make them relevant, make them practical so that people can understand them. Because if I can do it, anyone can. I was not introverted, but growing up as I did and being abused, and I didn't know how to talk to people. I was very socially isolated growing up. I was homeschooled. We didn't go to church. We didn't go to school. And so I just didn't know how to have a normal conversation. Like if you got on an elevator with me, I would be like, oh, please don't say anything, because I don't know what I'm going to say. And it wasn't that I was shy. I didn't really know how to respond. And now I talk to people for a living. So, that's a huge growth path in and of itself. And so I tell people, I'm like, we can all get better at influencing other people, but we have to develop our skills. It's like learning a foreign language. If you move to a different country and you don't try to learn the language, it's going to be tough to interact. Leadership is the language of influencing other people.
That's fantastic. Leadership is the language of influencing other people. That's awesome. Ria, I have 4 daughters that are 20, 18, 17. I have a 15-year-old son, but then a 7-year-old daughter.
Wow.
What's your advice to younger women that are, starting to move into more and more influence as they get older, into late high school and college?
There again, I kind of go back to be intentional with a growth plan. And that might look like a different plan for different people. One of the ways that I'm very intentional about my personal growth is I commit to reading 50 nonfiction books every year. Now, not everybody wants to do that. I just really love to read.
Yeah, I can tell behind you.
Yes. But every one of us can commit to spending 15 minutes a day developing ourselves, reading something, listening to a podcast. Figure out what's best for you, what way you can grow. It doesn't have to be something we do all day, but something we do every day, because the power of consistency cannot be overstated. Yeah. It's just something we underestimate the value of. I think it's John Maxwell who says we overestimate what we can accomplish in a day, and we underestimate what we can accomplish in a year, right? If you're just reading, 3 pages a day out of a book, that's why I write all of my books in 3-page chapters, because it's easy, bite-sized little nugget. But if you just read 3 pages a day, in 30 days, you'd have finished a whole book, or if you're reading one of my books or one of Mac's books. And then if you did that once a month, every 30 days, you'd have read 12 books at the end of a year, right? And so even if you just got one little nugget or one great quote out of everyone, you'd be that much further ahead in a year. So get intentional about it, whatever it looks like for you. That's been the biggest thing that's contributed to my success personally and professionally.
Yeah. You know what I really love about you, Ria, is that everything is simple. Like every question I've asked you, you've kind of brought it back to be intentional, start simple. Be intentional, start simple. And Tanya on our comment feed, Tanya Lowe, Dr. Tanya Lowe, who's JMT with us as well, she wrote, leadership is a language of influencing other people. Ria, I'm going to be quoting you on this with lots of explanation points. And what I've enjoyed about our conversation so far, you drop so many little wisdoms of nuggets. Like it's just, you're just talking, but you're dropping some really important and very simple and significant action steps that any of us can apply in our life. So I just want to affirm you in that and thank you for that, because I really have been sitting here listening, and when you stop talking, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm on with it. I forgot. I've really just been just love listening to you talk about leadership. So that's my little fan side of this for you.
Well, thank you. That's just really, I am an avid reader, and and I practice the message that I'm delivering. I'm only really able to do that because I'm intentional about growing myself. When I wrote my first book in 2014, it was 64 pages. I kid you not. It was like a mini book, 4 inches by 4 inches. And I got done and I was like, man, I almost didn't have enough to say to fill up those 64 pages. And here I am 12 books later, and I'm like, man, I want to write another one, because then, there again, it just shows you what consistently developing myself has been able to help me raise my level of awareness. And that's why it's important for all of us is maybe you don't want to write a book or be a speaker, but every single book I read or something like that I learned something from, it helps change the way we think, right? It helps change our mindsets. And, being successful and influencing people isn't as much about what we do as it is about who we are. And that's really where I think we miss it sometimes. We get caught up in the things that we do, and we those are important, but most of our influence, research shows us that most of our influence comes from our character. It's how we do what we do, right? And we don't think about developing that. We don't talk about it. I mean, I have 3 management degrees, and not one single credit hour that I ever had talked about how do I build my influence.
Yeah, and it's we live in a world that is all about skill development and climb the ladder and make more money, but we really don't talk enough about the right way of doing it. And I come back, and I know you know this quote, I'm sure, but Zig Ziglar, one of his famous quotes that I've held on to for years is, you can have everything you want in life if you just help enough people get what they want in life. Mm-hmm. And that really comes down to influence. And in order to be influential, or the other term I like to say is a trusted advisor, you actually have to give trusted advice. And that means learn, read, listen, and I tell my kids a lot now too, I don't care if you read as much, but I want you to be a learner. Podcasts are more there in their generation, and that's fine, but it's what comes in is going to come out. So be aware of what you're putting in your brain, what is teaching you how to behave, how to respond, how to speak, how to think. And I love that you just keep reemphasizing that. And your reading, your learning, your passion for learning has taken you from leaving home with abuse in your background, no high school diploma, no money, to writing 12 books? 13
12 books. I just released the 12th one, Fearfully and Wonderfully Me, Become the Woman You Were Destined to Be.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about that, and we'll wrap up. And then we'll make sure that we have links on here so everybody can find you and find access to your book. I know, by the way, everybody, Ria is very humble. I asked her about links to her website and all the stuff. She says, oh no. But I will put links in here on her books and where you can find her, because she's worth following. She's worth being influenced by, and I want to make sure that you all have easy access to her. So.
Oh, well, thank you for your kind words.
Absolutely.
When I first started writing books, I have 3 that I talk about my personal story and kind of the resilient side of that. And it really, when I just released this book, I was like, this is the book that I wish I had written, for myself many years ago.
Yeah.
It's the book I needed to read back then. And I really talk about personal growth and transformation in this book, because all of us have goals and dreams and things that we want to accomplish. But we don't always think about, we've got to transform from where we are today and who we are today into that person that can achieve those things, right? We all have big goals and dreams of what life can be like, and that's a good thing. But we've got to focus on transforming ourselves and developing ourselves. So I talk about the 7 elements of personal growth and transformation, starting with self-belief and going through self-worth and self-love and self-care and self-development. And, until we get to that process of becoming the person that can do and be and have whatever we want in life. And, it's a journey. It's not going to be an overnight thing by any means. And I tell people in the very introduction of the book, I'm like, look, this is going to be some work. It's not going to necessarily be easy, right? But anything worth having is going to cost us something. And if you're willing to put the work in, almost anything really is possible.
Absolutely. Well, and as you say, you share your story so people can think, if she can do it, so can I.
Absolutely.
And, you're an encouragement that, we've all been through things in life. But I appreciate so much how you share your story. You're willing to share your story, be vulnerable, and give people hope, but not just hope. You give them skills. You give them a map. You give them a path to improve, to grow, to overcome adversity, and find the goals and pursue those goals in their life. So, Ria, can you show us a copy of your book there so everybody can see it?
I think I can. I don't know if it will.
There we go. Yep. Fearfully
There we
and
go.
Wonderfully Me. Absolutely.
Yep. And then I've got a workbook that has just come out. This is actually the proof, but kind of, for those who want a deeper dive, more of a journaling, reflection questions and that kind of thing. Because there again, if all you do is just read the material, that's not going to do anything. You actually have to do something with it.
Absolutely. Well, Ria, thank you so much for being with us. Are there any final words of wisdom or nuggets that you want to share to the Living Life 2.0 community?
I come back to what I always say is that what happens to us in life isn't as important as who we become because of it, right? We can't control the people. We can't control anything, most of anything, but we always have the ability to control ourselves. And the choices that we make really make us. I like to say our belief drives our behaviors, right? We may not, you've heard the cliche, if you believe it, you can achieve it. That might not be true for quite everything, but if you don't believe it, you won't achieve it because you won't believe it. And our belief drives our behavior. If you don't believe it, you won't act like you can do it. You won't do it. Yeah. And then our potential is realized one choice at a time.
Absolutely. Well, Ria, thank you so much again for being with us. And everybody, I will make sure that there's links in the comments to her book and to her website. And you can connect with her there if you would like to. I highly recommend it. And for everyone else, tomorrow, 4 o'clock, I will be on with Kristen Andre, and she's going to be talking about you are not for everyone, but you can be for everyone. So come on back tomorrow in Living Life 2.0. Thank you all so much. Appreciate you being with us. Be blessed, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Bye. Thanks, Brandon. Take care.
Bye, Ria. Thanks so much. There we go.